Hello and welcome to Game Air. Um, so we've got an exciting review for us today, and it is Scarlet Nexus from Bandai Namco, and from Kenji, Anabuki, and it is a psychopunk RPG. It's the best I can describe it. It is an absolute blast. I had so much fun playing it at the time, and I can't stop talking about it. As many people have seen, we've got our original artwork from Jade and myself. This time around, I did the lines and the early composition, but then Jade pretty much took it on her own. Looked at the colors, looked at what I was requesting, and I think she really outdid herself this time. She just seems to be getting better and better. But enough about us. Enough about us. You've heard enough about us. We simply exist for your entertainment. Wouldn't that be? Isn't that a little bit sad if that were true? um, but yeah, Scarlet Nexus. Like I said, it's a psychopunk RPG, action RPG, and it follows the adventures of Yuto and Kasane in a fictional version of current day Japan, I believe. I'm fairly certain it's 2020 actually, so it's a past version of Japan, but it's a fictional version. And basically, there are these people called psionics, and there are these creatures called others. And what happens in the game is you are part of an elite force of individuals who fights the others to keep Japan safe from them. Now, it is an anime through and through. The action is over the top. The score is fantastic, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I had reservations going in the first couple hours, and I think that was down. What was it down to? It was down to the fact that it felt a little. It felt a little disjointed, if I'm being honest. I found that whenever the action would get going, and the action's great, the best thing about this game is the action. Second, like the only thing second to it is the story. The story is also brilliant. The problem I had with it was its presentation of the story and the action. For example, I played this in a PS5. I was lucky enough to get a PS5, PS4 version of this. So, you get the PS4 version and then you can upgrade to a PS5 if you have one, which I do, luckily. I was one of the lucky people who was able to grab one of those. And the Smith's store sale, GameStop sale, was mad. And so basically, the game starts off and it's really interesting. You learn about Yuto or Kasane, depending on who you choose. You can choose between either of these characters. And Kasane is really interesting because she's the stoic, dark, straightforward, elite member of the OSF, which is the group you're a part of. And then Yuto is the complete opposite. He is a volunteer. His powers developed a bit later than other people's, and he's not an elite. He's powerful, like he's got some interesting moves, but he's nothing to write home about compared to say Kasane. So you choose between their stories and their two branching stories. So there is a level of replayability in this game because for a large section of the game, I want to say 80% of the game, you're following only one of these characters with their group of teammates. So if you're with Yuto, you're getting one side of the story, and if you're with Kasane, you're getting the other side. And it's really interesting when it finally converges. I'll also say, I do want to go back and play it again. I finished it. It took me 30 hours to finish Yuto's storyline. He's got a sword. I'm a sucker for swords, for katanas of any kind in Japanese RPG. And Kasane has these weird blades that they're called butterflies, and she just literally throws them and uses her psionic abilities to fling them further than they should be able to possibly go. So anyway, long tangent. We'll go back to the main point. Is that when all this action's going on and it's over the top because everyone on your team has ridiculous powers. You have Hanabe who has fire manipulation. I don't know how that's psychic. Like she's pyrokinetic basically. You have one individual who I absolutely adored, Yuka, who is a tiny little boy. And Luca, excuse me, it's been a little while since I played the game. Luca is a tiny little boy, maybe like 4 foot, and he is called a septetrian, which is basically an elite of an elite. He is incredibly strong, and his ability is teleportation. So he can just zip around the whole city without wasting any energy. And he's got a brother. Brother might be one of my most favorite characters because I love OP characters. If any of you watch my streams, you know how much I love OP characters. His name is Karen, and Karen has the ability called Brain Eater, which is basically he can copy any ability he sees. Any psionic ability, as long as he can touch the person and then copy it to his body. So it's a nice loophole over the fact that you can only have one psionic ability. People only ever have one psionic ability at a time. Otherwise, their brain would supposedly explode. But Karen gets around this by the fact that his psionic ability allows him to copy other abilities. So he still technically only has one ability. It just copies others. And he's a really interesting force in the game. Another fun kind of element that I loved was... Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. So I suppose I'll continue with these slight issues I had, was the fact that when all this action's going on with all these ridiculous powers, fire, telekinesis, that's what your two characters have, and water manipulation, invisibility, electricity, all these kind of moves. The game decides that right as it gets into the action, it's going to turn into a manga. So when you're getting really into the drama, when you're really getting into the action, it freezes. And it goes into a chapter, a page out of a book. And you're just there going, dude, this is some blue balls right here. Because you have got a very cinematic style of gameplay. Like, even from our artwork, even from our humble artwork, you can see Yuto and Kasane look brilliant. There's also the fact that when you're in full-blown combat and you're utilizing the brain drive, you turn into this weird tendril shadow, almost like a tendril shinobi. And that's what I've drawn in the center there, where you get these things plugged into your back and you just are ripping apart the enemy. And this is amazing. So when it goes into the cinematic should be this. The cinematic should be completely over the top. Now, they do it sometimes, but most of the time it's static images of people talking to each other, and then a frame might move, and then they're in a new pose and they're kind of fighting. And I don't know, it's a bit of blue balls in that kind of respect, because I was just like, I was itching to see these fights go all out, because it's a real shame. I really enjoyed it. If there was another issue that I had, some of the characters up until towards the end feel a bit... The story structure feels a bit loosey-goosey. The fact is, about halfway through this game, maybe actually only a third of the way through the game, there's a civil war. And so you're fighting characters that you know. And the problem is that you then still have to go on bonding missions with them. The game introduces a bonding system much like Persona, or... it's Persona. Persona's the best example. And or Mass Effect, where you go on missions with people, you talk to people, you have bonding missions, and you can give them special gifts, stuff like that. And this is weird when 2/3 of the game you're like fighting the cast, and every time you meet the cast, you fight them. So the bonding missions are happening, and you're just like, this seems inorganic. This doesn't feel like it's selling the story correctly. So I was a little bit peeved at that. Thankfully, it's resolved in a convincing fashion towards the end of the game, and the bonding missions just work. Just like they flow perfectly after that. And I think that's really all the problems I had with this game. The combat system is fantastic. It's so aggressive. You'll be surrounded a lot by enemies. The AI is pretty intense, and I really loved the design of the others. The others have this weird kind of Lovecraftian style of design, where some of them don't look right. When you see them, they just look off to you. Like you can say some of them look kind of like, oh, that's a bison, but then it's got something that sets it apart from a bison. Like it might have a goat's head, and that goat's head is just like encased in armor. Then there's a crocodile one. There's a crocodile type of other, but it's encased in armor, and then there's this pulsating, almost like spot on it, and that's the weakness of all the others. If you can get to that point, you can weaken them far quicker than if you were to go into an all-out brawl. And the others have various abilities as well. They can go invisible. They also can utilize various elemental abilities like electricity, fire, stuff like that. But you have all of these abilities thanks to the brain map, which allows you to sync up with your teammates and basically become a one-man army. Like the SAS, as it's called, is basically, because I was hoping it was called SAS, because that sounds cooler, and an anagram would sound cool, but it's not. It's just called SAS. And so I felt sassy when I was going out into those battlefields. And basically what you do is you link up with your 3 compatriots. Sorry, 4. No, 3, because one of them is your... No, it is 4. But you only get 3 party members. And basically... No, sorry. Good God, listen to me. You get 2 party members. And then you get your full team. And you can utilize all of your team's abilities because they're psychically linked to you. But you have the 2 party members who will actually fight with you on the battlefield. And so, there's no... It's not too difficult. If you can have your favorites with you. And then you go from there. But you can still utilize all of the abilities of your team. You're never restricted in that sense, and I loved that. And it explodes. The level of abilities you get to utilize towards the end of the game gets even bigger, doubles in size, actually. And I loved it. Combining abilities, which is mainly what you're doing in this game, you're combining abilities to find the weaknesses of your opponents and then just hammering home that weakness is absolutely brilliant. I have to, I just have to tip of the hat to Anabuki san. He delivered a hell of a game with his team. I wasn't sure how I was going to like it or not. There's a lot of... Bandai release a lot of anime games, and unless it's an established franchise, like, say, One Piece or Dragon Ball Z or, games of those ilk, like, Dragon Ball Fighters and the One Piece Pirate Warrior games and stuff like that, they don't always land. Even they don't always land sometimes. Because, it's a lot of filler, if you understand what I mean. There's, for every Dragon Ball Fighters, there's a Dragon Ball Xenoverse. There's actually 3 Dragon Ball Xenoverses. I don't even know how many at this point. Maybe 4. And so when I played this unknown element, I didn't play Code Vein. I wasn't interested visually. It felt like a kind of knockoff of God Eater, so I wasn't interested. So I played this, got into it, and I fell in love with it. The main reason I think I fell in love with it is because slowly but surely the characters of the game, just like I fell in love with them. I fell in love with all of them. Like I said already, Luca is my favorite because he's basically, the thing about all of the OSF soldiers is that they have to take a drug which basically stops them from aging. The reason being is the child brain can develop far better than an adult brain. That's a good science to fall back on to explain, well, why are you keeping these kids? Like, you're basically got child soldiers. And so when this was revealed in the game that he's actually been on this for decades, I was like, this is fascinating. They've got this child soldier who's insanely powerful, and he's been doing this for decades, and he's still, he's either in his 30s and looks like a 14-year-old or is even older. Because his older brother, Karen, looks like a man in his maybe late 20s, which means he's probably in his 40s or 50s. And yeah, it was really interesting just to see that story. And when you bond with each of the characters, you learn about their interests, and then you go on missions that relate to their interests. For Luca, it was about getting strong because he feels he relies on his ability too much. And, if ever it happened that he was in an area where he can't use his ability, or his ability gets drained, or for God forbid that he loses his ability, because in this world there are duds, humans who do not have psychic abilities. They take up, I think, maybe 5% of the whole populace of the world. It's like My Hero with the quirkless, and you don't see them. And I think that was a conscious effort by the game to not let you see these poor individuals who are are likely treated as second-class citizens. And his journey is fascinating. Luca's journey is fascinating because he also has a really fun quirk about him, that he wants to work out and get buff and everything because he's a small child, and it's very easy physically to hurt him, but you'd have to catch him, and also he could easily kill you because he teleports all around the place. He can teleport anywhere. He can do anything, and he's very cutthroat, and he's very straight laced, and he's also quite offbeat, and I quite liked that about him. Ton of characters in this game that I absolutely adored. Kagero is a really interesting character. His ability is invisibility, and yeah, he was just fascinating as a character to watch develop. Yuto and Kasane, they're protagonists, so they get the usual protagonist kind of journey of the hero's journey, each of them. I would say, because I followed Yuto's journey, I thought Yuto was far more interesting, but Kasane is the character that is probably more interesting because of the fact that she comes from a far more interesting place than he does. He has an interesting backstory, don't get me wrong, but Kasane has a really dark past, and stuff happens to her that is really messed up. Now, to be fair, stuff happens to Yuto. The game balances very nicely how much happens to them. They each have their own trauma to deal with, and it's fascinating to see how the game goes with it. Because the best part of this game, and I was genuinely surprised, like I said, is the combat and the story. I couldn't believe it. Maybe one of the worst parts is the side quests. I usually love a side quest. I'm a side quest fiend. I sin every day for side quests because you ever see me on Final Fantasy 14? Check me out. My name is Burning Sun. I'm on the PS4. I'm in Twentania, Europe. I'd be really far ahead in the game if I didn't keep falling into the side quests. I love them. I love side quests, especially when they're fun, especially when they're funny. My favorite ones are the Hildebrand side quests. Watching that bumbling investigator go all over the place, meet iconic characters from all the Final Fantasy lore is absolutely brilliant, and I had an absolute ball playing with him. So when I tell you that the side quests did nothing for me, save for the bonding missions, and the bonding missions are technically side quests, but they're categorized as bonding missions. They're not categorized as side quests. They were boring. Side quests are very boring. You literally go someplace, you kill some things in unique ways, and then you get an item. And it's usually an item that is not that great. I think that was one of the few things that really let the side down, is that I just didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. And I wanted to platinum this game so badly. I want to, but I know that I have to complete all the side quests, and I don't want to. It's as simple as that. I'll go back to the story because I want to see, because they tease some really interesting things with what happens with Kasane in halfway through this that I want to see, that I desperately want to see. And just thinking about all the side quests makes me think, no thanks. No thank you. So this brings me to one of my, again, I've already brought up, the combat system. It's fast-paced. You utilize the various abilities by corresponding button, triangle, circle, X, square, and the R2 button. You choose which ability you're going to use, and then it activates, sorry, it's R1, and you activate it, and then your teammate will team up with you, and through the SAS system will allow you to utilize their abilities. So for example, Yuto and Kasane can telekinetically wield anything, so they can pull like things out of the ground, hit enemies with it from far distance. It gives you a full reign to go nuts in these abilities. It's great. But if you say I activate the SAS system with Hanabe, the pyrokinetic, all my abilities are now on fire. Literally all my abilities are on fire. My sword goes on fire. Kasane's blades go on fire. It's the same for the electricity. It turns electric. And they have different elements to them. Like, for example, if I hit an enemy enough times with a shocked weapon, they will go into shock and they will be stunned for a time. If I go with fire, they will start to burn. And what's interesting is you can then utilize the various surroundings to hurt them even more, for example, or make them even more susceptible to fire. For example, there's barrels full of oil. You throw the barrel on them, and you turn to fire mode, and you hit them, and they do and that does a ton of damage. It is absolutely brilliant. Same thing with there's barrels of water. You hit them barrels of water, and you go into electric, and boom. You then have Gemma, who is I can't pronounce his ability. Basically, he turns rock solid. He turns solid like a diamond and cannot be hurt. What that has to do with psychic abilities, who knows? But he turns rock solid, and when you do it, you turn rock solid. So enemies can't hurt you, and it lasts for as many times as you're hit. So as they're hitting you, the bar will go down, and it's pretty cool just to kind of like, because there are certain enemies that have unblockable abilities, but if you turn his ability on, they can't hit you. They can't hurt you. And then there are the invisible opponents. These are some of my favorite because it was just stupid just to see this. One person in the group, I can't remember her name, unfortunately. She's adorable. She is a clairvoyant. So if an enemy goes invisible, you activate her ability, and you can now see invisible because clairvoyants can see the invisible. Go with it. And it's so much fun because you can really go nuts with your abilities because you get a brain map, which is basically the sphere grid. We all know the sphere grid because we all played Final Fantasy X. Now, it's a much more simplified sphere grid because nothing has been, in my opinion, as over the top as the sphere grid. Everything's copied it. And basically, in the sphere grid, you have access to all these abilities. You get BP, brain points. And basically, with these brain points, you can activate various skills. You can increase your combos with your sword. You can increase your psychic abilities so that you can last longer using more moves and so on. And you increase your strength, you increase your durability, stuff like that. The usual stuff. But then there's also the abilities where you can enhance your connections with your friends. So at first, you can only sync with one person. So I'll turn on Hanabi's ability, or Gemma's ability, or Luca's ability, or Kagero's ability, and that will mean I have their ability for a time. And it's a long time. It's a decent length of time. But you can also lengthen that time. That's the great thing. As you bond with them, that also lengthens the time, gives you new abilities, new combos. They might come in and help you in the dire situations. It's great. But with the brain map, you can then extend these even further by unlocking, and these are found all over the map, so it's very hard to find these. You can activate more links. So say, for example, at the beginning, you can only link in the SAS with Hanabi. You find this ability later in the game that you activate. You can then activate Hanabi's and Gemma's. So things are on fire and you're rock solid. Or, and this is a favorite of mine, one of the characters has super speed. Like literally she moves at super speed. So you activate her and then you activate Luca. And I don't know if this worked or not because I think I messed it up. I think they negate each other. But it means that you will move at super speed, the enemy are slowed down, and you teleport to them. And so it's a perfect combo. I know that you can't activate Hanabi and the electric guy's abilities together because they're two elementals, so it wouldn't make sense. But you can combo all of these together so that you can have multiple abilities on top of each other, and they do devastating damage. At one point, you can have 4 abilities on at once. And when you have the 4 abilities on at once, you feel like a god. Like, oh, there's invisible enemies over there. No problem. I turn on clairvoyance. Oh no, they're weak to fire, but I can't hit them because I don't have my fire ability on. Turn on fire. Oh, they're hitting me really hard, so I have to turn on Gemma so that I can withstand the damage. Grand. Oh, Luca. I'll turn on Luca, and then I can teleport to them. Done. You have all these abilities, and that's when you max out. And when you max out, the progression of strength and power within these psychic abilities is immense. The game's progression is really well done, and I adored it. And then the story really surprises you. There are surprisingly potent and emotional moments in the story. Now, I haven't played the English version. I prefer Japanese. Dub has hurt me sometimes. I recently watched Demon Slayer, Mugen Train, and I prefer the Japanese over the dub. That's what I've always watched Demon Slayer on. And so when I heard English version Tanjiro, didn't like it. I'm a fan. I've already liked Bryce Papenbrook, so when I heard Inosuke in that, like, I've met Bryce a couple times. He's a really great guy. He worked for Inosuke. Zenito. Zenito? Yeah, I think it's Zenito. Zenetsu. Excuse me. Zenetsu was grand. Obviously, Nezuko doesn't talk, so. And also Rengoku had a great voice. Very funny. So yeah, I prefer Japanese, so I can't say it for the English. I've heard a lot of praise on it, so that's great. But the Japanese, they really bring it home with, like, just pouring out all their emotion when it comes to scenes that just are absolutely ridiculous. And the game is ridiculous. Like, it starts off as one thing, and then slowly but surely, it turns into, like, an episode of Doctor Who. Like, that's kind of what the game ends up being. A really cool, action-packed episode of Doctor Who. If Doctor Who, like, ran into some aliens who had psychic elemental abilities, I don't know. Which would be a good episode of Doctor Who. And so I loved that the story could pull out these emotional beats. And yeah, I've said I teared up a little bit once or twice. Not everyone makes it out of this, guys. Not everyone makes it out of this story. And it has a very interesting ending. I'm surprised that they went through what they went through. I'm surprised that they pulled off the kind of what they did in the last act. And I was very impressed. But yeah, it's a brilliant game. It is one of the most interesting games that I've played in a while, and I didn't expect it. And it also has one of these other things that very few games do. Media doesn't really do this much anymore. There's an anime that you can watch, and it basically tells the story of the game. From what I can tell, it's much faster because there's a big thing that happens a third of the way through the game that just, like, kind of shatters everything, and it happens in the second episode of the anime. Now, granted, from what I've researched, the anime is only 12 episodes, so they must be, like, spinning wheels really quick to get that whole game done. I don't know how the anime is going to work, though, because obviously you have two separate characters following two separate journeys, and I don't know how that's going to work in a 12-episode series. Who do you follow? Is it going to be completely different? Because right now, it looks a little bit more character-focused than the game, but apart from that, not much else. But I will say I do like the anime, and I am watching it. I'm looking forward to when the next episode comes out. They've got 2 episodes up, and the 3rd episode's coming out soon. I will say, do not watch it if you want to get this game. Do not watch it, because big old spoiler happens in episode 2. Massive spoiler. So, yeah. Hydrate. I really enjoyed it. It's not a perfect game. Like I said, the visuals, this could have been an incredibly cinematic game. This could have been like an anime, like, poured into a PS5 or a PlayStation 4, whichever is your console of choice, or a PC. I believe it's on PC. At a much cheaper price, might I add. My friends continually point that out. continuing asking me, Graham, why is this game at €70 on the PS4, PS5, while on the PC it's 50? To which I go, I don't know. I don't own Bandai Namco. I'd love to. Maybe I'd steer them in a few, more charitable directions. Maybe lower the price. But I suppose that's the pricing now, and it's a shame because I definitely think that'll keep a lot of people away from their initial sales. But apart from that, apart from those few little issues that are just my problems, I don't know about you. I had an absolute blast on Scarlet Nexus. I can't wait. I hope there's a sequel because you could go a lot further. The world is not quite done. I could see a potential sequel going in some weird directions, like even weirder than what's happening in the game. And there's a lot you can polish. There's a lot you could polish to get this to even greater heights. But yeah, Scarlet Nexus is a near perfect game for me for what I was in the mood for. I had so much fun. The combat was great. The leveling system, I grinded up until I think level 60, and you start from level 1 to level 60, and I did that because the bosses are tough. Enemies are tough. I think I died once or twice though, and that's due to careful resource management, and also just learning the patterns of the bosses. The bosses are tough. Some of the bosses are surprisingly tough. There's one boss, because you do fight humanoids at some points. Some of the humanoid bosses are harder than the others. The others are just weird. The others are fascinating designs that I absolutely adored. But the humanoid enemies are the fun ones, are the really fun ones, because they always are. The humanoid ones, because that in my head I always go, who would win in a battle between these characters, and those fights do happen in this. So if you're one of those who goes into an anime and goes, I want to see the X and Y fight because that would be an interesting fight, you get that in this game, and I really liked that as well. So it's definitely for anime fans, but there's a lot here for RPG fans. There's a lot here for action fans, and there are some disturbing elements in this game. Some not massively horror, but there's some messed up stuff that I was surprised they did, and was impressed they went all the way through it. So I just like to say for one last time, Kenji Anabuki and your team, thank you. This game has been an absolute blast to play. I highly recommend it. If the €70 pricing for the PS4 and the PS5 holds you off, go for PC maybe. Get yourself, you probably have a controller, so you're fine there. Or wait for a price drop. Other than that, I highly recommend it. It is a great game, loads of fun, and there's an anime. Also, I will state, there's a mission in the game, forgot to say this, there's a mission in the game where if you watch the anime, it'll give you little messages in the anime that you can then transport over to the game. And something happens, supposedly, when you finish the missions. And you finish the anime. So I don't know what that is yet, because obviously all 12 episodes aren't yet. But this is a nice incentive to watch the anime, I have to say. So yeah, guys, thanks so much. It's been an absolute blast. I'll see you on Friday, where I will be playing Persona, or potentially something else, something scary. So until then, thanks so much, guys, and have a good rest of the week. Hope I got you over the hump day. Bye-bye.